Hi there, welcome to Nonsense Whisky. My name's Vin PF, and on today's episode we're going to be going back over to Wales. Now at the moment there's only kind of really one Welsh distillery, and that's the Penderyn Distillery, so that's really all I've covered, but I have covered two other their bottlers before, and that was the Madeira finish and the peated. I'll put those up on a link up here so you can check those out if you want. But one of those videos was my 21st video, and it's a bit rough around the edges, so if you're looking for a laugh, I would definitely go and check that one out. But today, we're going to be looking at the Sherrywood. Now before we get into this whiskey, I would just like to clarify that this is their old style bottling, as was the other two that I covered. So I said that the Madeira and the peated, they were both in this style of bottling. Now this has since been kind of superseded by a new fancy bottle with some little weird wings on it, but I am kind of sure that it's the same liquid in there. So if you're watching this review and you've got a different bottle to me, I don't think it'll be much different. The price may have been slightly different though, but that's another story for another day. Now, if you haven't watched my other videos, Pandaren, Welsh distillery that are definitely worth checking out because they're doing some pretty amazing stuff. They're doing things a little bit differently to their Scotch counterparts, in that they've got this kind of weird still that I've never seen anywhere else. It's called a Faraday Still. It's still batch produced, so they still get away with calling themselves single malt whiskey, but it's a pot still with a column on top of it that goes into a column still. So it's like both the column and the pot still. Now, if we know a little bit about column still distilling, is that it's a continuous process, it isn't batch, whereas this is batch. Now in 2014, they have bought two new kind of traditional style Scotch stills. Now if you've been to a distillery, if you're watching this channel, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. The kind of traditional still goes like this. Now they've bought two of those, but the liquid we're trying today hasn't come out of those stills, and I think that they're still just experimenting with those, so it might be a while before we see any traditional malts from them. The reason why I'm saying this is because the Penderyn distillate and their kind of resulting whiskies are a little bit strange in character. They've got a very, very distinctive flavour set that I really like, but I've given to understand that it really does divide the field somewhat. You're either on one side or the other. So it's definitely worth trying these before you buy, because they can start getting a little expensive. This one in particular, you can get the new style shape of this for around about £40, maybe 45 if you're unlucky. And for that you're getting a 46%er, no age statement, but it is natural coloured non-chill filtered. Now, they've only been going for kind of a decade and a half really, so even if they had the oldest stuff going in it, it would only be about sort of 15 years old, but it isn't that, that's for sure. It's definitely underneath 10 years old, but as we'll get into when we get into the whiskey itself, I don't think that really matters because they're presenting it well. Now they've got two different kinds of ranges out at the moment that are kind of their general core ranges. They've got some other fancy bits and bobs as well, but the standard ones are the Dragon range, which has stuff like the Legend, the Myth and the Celt in it. And in order, the Legend is Madeira wine finished, the Myth is ex-red wine cask finish, and the Celt is finished in a peated quarter cask, which is probably a Lefroy quarter cask, let's be honest about it. The Gold range, now this is what we're covering here, and it used to have this distinctive kind of gold seam down the front here, but that's all the ones I've covered on the channel so far as well. That one includes the Madeira, the Portwood, the peated, which I have covered already, the Sherrywood, which I'm covering now, and there's a new one that's just been added to the range maybe a few months ago, which is the Rich Oak. Now, the names of those kind of give away the finishes of those. These are all their whiskies are ex-bourbon matured and then finished in these kind of fancy names. So here, like this is the Sherrywood, this is Oloroso Sherry. The only one that doesn't really tell you what is in the barrel is the Rich Oak, which is another ex-red wine cask. Lots of information. The difference between those two ranges that I said, the Dragon and the Gold, really is the percentage. So we've got a 41%er and a 46%er. I'll wager the Gold range is a little bit more aged, but I can't guarantee that. I don't know that for a fact. Let's stop talking about Pandaren and start talking about the whiskey that's in this glass here. It's been sat out for a little bit. Let's get on to the nose. If you're in any way, shape or form a fan of sherried whiskies, you know exactly what you're getting with this. There's some honey notes that are quite forward, but it's those kind of dried fruits, you know, sultanas, maybe even a little bit of raisins. For me, there's also a little bit of citrus there, kind of lemony citrus. Not a lot, you really got to dig for that though, so, but it's in there. Let's get onto the palate. The first thing that hit me with this was there's a real viscosity to it. It's quite thick, nice, thick flowing viscosity led dram. There's a whole heap of spiciness to this thing. Massive amounts of spice, but we're talking about kind of cinnamon, nutmeg, that kind of thing. I wanted to say white pepper, but I don't think it's quite that kind of nasally spiciness. Now once you get over those kind of initial sensations, it's got a really kind of thick, fruity, juicy note to it. Very indicative of those sherry flavours. So again, if you're into your sherry whiskies, and even if you're into your sherry to be fair, then you're probably going to find some enjoyment here. It isn't like a sherry bomb, let's say, so it's only been finished in the sherry casks rather than aged in it entirely, but I think that's enough. It's just enough in there to give it that slight influence, but for me, it's a pretty tasty flavour. Now, on the finish, just as all of those other flavours disappear, you get this huge waft of oak. Real woody notes. Lots of those tannins that are coming through, and I guess that's something to do with the casks they're picking. You know, they're not cheaping out on their casks at Pandaren. And that oak kind of filters through all throughout the finish. Lots of spices, really more of them sherry fruits. It isn't a very surprising dram. You know, you can kind of guess what you're going to get before you even try it, but I think that's to its benefit. Now, as I said, it's 40 to 45 pounds, so this isn't a cheap whiskey. But for me, I'm not too bothered about that. You know, I've got a bottle right here, and I would definitely buy a bottle of the newer version as well. I probably could have kept this and kept it sealed and made some money off of it, but that's not me, and you guys should know that by now. But I'm not into kind of flipping whiskey at all, really. I've got a few that I haven't enjoyed in the old pocket over there that I have kept back, but I'll probably still open those to see if my taste has changed in a couple of years. In any case, this is a recommendation from me. Just to reiterate, as I said at the start of the show, it's one of those try before you buy whiskies, and I don't mean that in terms of this particular whiskey, their whole range. If you've liked one of them, you'll probably like the rest of them, but they do have a very distinctive flavour that seems to divide the field amongst the people that I know. For me, I'm well on the side of love it, but you might want to try it just to make sure you're not one of these people who doesn't like it before you buy a whole bottle. And if you do, give it to someone like me. Hi there, welcome to No Nonsense Whisky. My name's VinPF, and on today's episode we're going to be going... The myth is sherry cask finish, or reiterated at the start of the just to reiterate, like I said at the start of the program,